Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to Evolve Flow Express. In this episode, it'll just be a solo episode with me and myself and I. So we're going to be talking about shadow work and self integration. I believe that shadow work in itself isn't something that's necessarily negative. I feel like a lot of times we're kind of like looking at shadow work as like, oh, this is something bad within me that I need to correct, or, I need to kind of go through a process of really condemning myself and figuring out all the things that's wrong with me. And I believe that shadow work is really just actually understanding yourself more so, understanding what affects you, why it affects you that way, if you would like to change the effect, and how to best do that for yourself in terms of your process for your own internal growth. Um, in all, I've had my own moments of doing shadow work. I'm not finished. I feel like it's an ongoing process. It's an ongoing learning process, the same as emotional awareness. I feel like it's the same thing. It's ongoing. It's never a thing of like, I've reached the peak and that's it. It's going to be a continuous process of learning, because you're always going to encounter things that you didn't know would trigger you. It's like, oh, wow, this actually upset me or this offended me. And then when you get to that point, you have to more so say, okay, well, why did this offend me? And that goes also into self reflection. That's really what it is. You're self reflecting and thinking, well, why did this affect me this way? Because I really didn't like the way that I might have responded to whatever it might have been. You might not like feeling that way, so you might want to change it more so. And I feel like it's better to go that route rather than thinking, well, this person offended me and they need to change, how they said something or the way they might have come across to me. And everybody doesn't know you like you, per se. Everybody doesn't know the way that you operate, how you learn things. Everybody doesn't know your family, who also played a big part in your growth, in who you are and how they shaped you, your environment, all these different things. They didn't go through that same process. Also, everybody does not have your same perspective, and that's also based off of the way you grew up, your family, all these different things that I just explained. So it's better to more so work on your inner self and the way that things affect you in the world if you don't like the way that it feels when things trigger you. And that's going to be a big part of your shadow work. It's kind of a tough process. If you really, really go through it, it requires a lot of times isolation. It requires just you not also expressing everything that you're thinking, everything that you're feeling all the time. You might have to internally battle with things in the moment. And, everybody's not going to see the process that you go through. Everybody's not even going to um, praise you or give you the congratulations on whatever small achievement that you might have made internally or just in your own space of growth. So you have to come to terms with that as well. It's not about praise, it's not about people congratulating you on, the change within you. It's about you actually wanting the change and enjoying the process. Um, and when I say enjoy the process, I don't mean that you will love it. I don't mean that you will think that, oh, this is so great. I feel so good every moment. Is more so appreciating the learning lessons and different things like that, like we've expressed in previous episodes with my guests. Appreciating those learning curves. Excuse me, sorry, but appreciating those learning curves and understanding that those are necessary for you to get to a higher point. It's a part of growth. Like growth actually requires pain. When they say you have growing pains, it's not just physically, it's emotionally, it's spiritually, it's mentally a lot of times as well. So you really have to take moments for yourself, and that's what I mean by isolation. And that all is required in your journey of shadow work. Don't necessarily condemn yourself. Don't necessarily always judge yourself in a negative light about the things that you're not proud of. More so, be more introspective about it. Just think, well, why is this doing this? And, think of more of the why rather than the what. Um, it kind of helps with that part of the process. It really does. When you are self condemning, a lot of times rather than integrating yourself within the process, it creates a separation from it, and you tend to not learn the lesson. You tend to blame other people, you tend to think everybody else is the problem, and that might send you into isolation as well, but it might not be a good isolation. You probably are going to be um, not really able to have people and peers around you for long periods of time because you're unable to accept your part in the process of getting to know people, or just your part in how people are affected. um, Learning that at a young age because of different uh, I wouldn't necessarily say mistakes, but different decisions that I made, even as a preteen, as a teenager, as a young adult. You learn that your decisions, the different things that you do, they play a part in everybody's lives that's in your vicinity. So um, it's less about blaming other people, it's more about you. And it starts with you. Same way that my brother, he was my guest on my fifth episode, he explained that as well. It starts with you, um, in the way that you are kind of just moving in your own space and how you affect different things, even just by yourself, how you affect things. Like you have no one else to sit there and blame, so it's just you. But it starts with you. It starts with your perspective. It starts with your feelings, your thoughts, all these different things before it gets to anybody else. So that's the best place to start when it comes to changing your life, changing your perspective, changing your experience, all these different things. And yeah, I feel like that's a big part of your growth overall and spiritual growth, and just your shadow work overall. That's going to be a big part. You got to really start with you. You got to really go inside to deal without. Go inside, deal without. That's what my dad always says. But even also another point, even in my sixth episode with my guest Brittany, she brought up a big point of moving in love, and I feel like that was something really good as well, um, because it's not necessarily just moving in love with other people; it's also moving in love with yourself, um, and not self idolization in a sense, not how could I say it? Not necessarily being arrogant or egotistical about love. It's more so how you take care of yourself. Um, do you really appreciate the things that you are able to do? And are you also willing to share that with other people? Like, or do you feel more so selfish, or you feel embarrassed to even share these different things with people? Are you more so closed off with these different things? So I feel like showing yourself love is also giving yourself that attention that you're seeking from others, and it will actually kind of steer you from the whole vibe of looking for others for attention and approval, all these different things. So, but I think that was a really good point that she brought up of moving in love. I feel like that will help also with your inner work, um, and giving yourself grace. Giving yourself grace throughout the process is never ending. So don't think that, oh my gosh, I'm at my peak and this is it. This is all I got. No, it's going to be continuous. It's going to be something that you have to continue to grow on, continue to learn on, um, and you just have to know that throughout the process. Overall, I feel like in this episode, my message is to more so um, just work on yourself before you start to judge others and look outside of yourself, because a lot of times we use that as distractions, rather than doing the hard work of the shadow work and self integrating yourself within that shadow work. So, yeah. And I feel like that also can come down to self condemning, and you're judging yourself in a negative light because you don't really want to necessarily do the work. You just want to continuously complain. It's easier to complain than to do the work. So I feel like that's a good point for, people to take from this particular episode. Overall, the entire season is speaking about growth and different routes that you can take, self awareness, just being more so introspective about things, um, and how you are more so speaking into gratitude as well. On one of my episodes, I did speak about that. Um, Throughout your journey, using discernment, but not being like negative about it. There might not be people that continuously align with you throughout your journey. They might align with one segment or one season, and that's okay. That's life. People grow, and they don't always grow in different, like in the same directions. They grow in different directions most times. Like, you can think of it like a tree, and you have branches, you have leaves, even, that they're all growing in different directions. They're not necessarily just growing as one, um, but they're all a part of the tree. So it's all a part of life, in a sense, if you look at it. So either way, don't feel discouraged just because you're losing people, even throughout your moments of growth, and that's a part of shadow work as well. A lot of times you will lose people that you thought were going to be there forever, or you thought were going to be there for years, and they were going to be your ride or die. They might fall off. It's a high possibility, actually, especially if you're actually doing the work. Most people aren't willing to, so a lot of times we're going to have those friends around us that keep pulling us into distractions and keep, telling us, oh, we could do this, or blowing stuff off because they're not on the same path as you and they're not looking at life in the same aspect, or, on that level of seriousness, in the sense of making sure they do what they have to do to have a real, true, enjoyable life. Most people are just enjoying the moment. So when you are on that journey of being isolated and really truly working on yourself, the characteristics and aspects of yourself, and the way that you show up in the world, and your friends, or even your close family, or just people that you're really close with, they're not doing that same thing, they're not on that same journey. They honestly might judge you like immediately in a negative way. They might tell you, you've been acting different, you've been acting funny. Excuse me. And it's you are acting different. You're acting different. You might not be acting funny, but you are acting different because what they're used to is changing based on your work and what you're doing. And that just shifts people's comfortability. And I've talked about that in a previous episode as well. You're a part of someone's comfortable space, you're a part of somebody's comfortability. And when you shift, their comfortability shifts. Now you're changing things. Now you're causing disruption to what they're used to, their natural flow, their natural, what I'm saying, things of how, okay, this is my natural routine. I can go to, okay, say me, I can go to Couture and I can ask her about any, question or anything like that. I know I'm not supposed to do it, but I could ask her and she gonna be real with me because I just need somebody to talk to me and tell me that, oh, what I'm saying, I'm wrong. But I know that I'm wrong. And then this day, Couture says, I don't have time for this. I'll have to talk to you later. Now you've disrupted this person, or I guess me, since I'm using me as an example, I've disrupted this person's comfortability and their routine of things because they would normally call me or contact me for that. So to change that, now this person might be thinking, well, she acting funny, she hurried up and rushed off the phone, she didn't want to have the conversation, and I don't have the capacity for it. That's what it is. I've created space for other things and cut off the space for that, so my capacity has changed. I don't want to. I don't want to accept that. And that, you not wanting to accept something or even follow through with a routine that someone's used to, it will disrupt their whole plans of how everything was supposed to go, because most time people will map out the conversation because they're used to it if it goes the same way most of the time. But yeah, you disrupt people's comfortability when you change, when you're changing your inner work and you're doing all these different things. They're not understanding it because they're not on that level and they're not on that journey. But doesn't necessarily mean that they're a negative person, they're a bad person. It just might mean that you guys no longer align in that sense. So you just kind of got to take it as it comes and accept for people for who they are. Not to say that people can't change, but it's more so to say that they might not be at the point of changing the way that you are. So yeah, I feel like that is a good thing. I feel like overall, everything that I express is a lot that entails into shadow work and self integration. I feel like also um, another big thing is a lot of times we're we're avoiding um, doing the shadow work. We're avoiding it because we don't want to hold ourselves accountable, and we are steering away from being vulnerability. And a lot of times people look at vulnerability as a weakness. And I spoke about this on one of my previous, probably a couple of my previous episodes. But I personally look at vulnerability as really something of strength, because it takes a lot. It takes a lot for you to express things to people that you wouldn't want to honestly share. A lot of us walk around with a hard shell most times when we're out in the regular world, we're not in our own personal space in isolation, we're not expressing ourselves in the truest form. Um, so I feel like vulnerability is definitely something that takes a lot of strength. It's something that can be used as your strength. It can be a weakness, but it can also be, your strength. It's like a double sided sword in my sense. Like, I feel like you can definitely utilize it to your best ability, and honestly, you can utilize it to your benefit in a lot of different situations, especially in conversation. When you're trying to get a point across, you might be able to really express something through an experience, like an actual experience, and it might come across better to someone else rather than you kind of using some type of fictitious or vague explanation of things. So, vulnerability is definitely a big thing. Holding yourself accountable, and also holding yourself accountable in front of others. Holding yourself accountable in front of others is something that most people do not do. Most people avoid accountability, or they be like, I don't got nothing to do with it. They ain't got nothing to do with me. Or if they said something wrong, it's never really taking full responsibility for that. It's just like, oh, well, I'm only human, or what I'm saying? And it's not. It's good to be able to hold yourself accountable in all aspects, um, in, different moments, in all situations. If you are talking to someone, it's just as simple as, oh, my bad, I apologize, I got that wrong, or I overlooked something. I apologize. But the only human thing, it honestly takes the responsibility off of you to do better. Now it makes it seem like it's okay to mess up all the time. And that's kind of sometimes how your brain even might register it. So it's not necessarily saying that you need to always criticize yourself and just, be negative. It's more so to say that the way that you kind of speak on different things and the way that you react to certain things also trains your brain to continuously react in that same way, or that's okay to continuously do, rather than changing for the better in terms of growth and all these different things. I feel like the way that you express yourself, the way that you react to things, all this is data. Um, Even how you interact with other people, all this is data for your brain and how you will continuously move, from that moment. So you got to kind of think of it in that sense. Even the same way that we were talking about journaling in episode 6 with Brittany, we were talking about journaling and how you have to be careful about what you write and how you write it, and that's based on the fact that you're kind of training your own nervous system, your brain, to think that way. Now you have to understand, well, how am I going to actually perceive this if I'm doing these different things? And that goes into you doing your shadow work. You're going to have to ask serious questions to yourself. It might not be something you want to ask out loud, but you can write it down. You can write it down. You can make a list of things that you would like to know about yourself. A lot of people don't study themselves enough to know anything truly about themselves. They might know themselves through other people when other people are speaking about them and all these different things, but they might not know themselves just internally and just by themselves, if they were to actually introduce themselves or express themselves to someone, they might not know anything truly about themselves because they never sat down and do those different things of just being introspective and doing the shadow work. You actually sitting there trying to learn about yourself. Why do you react to these things? Okay, why do these things affect me? Okay, if I reacted to that way, why did I react to that this way when a different person came in to the picture? It could be different things like that. It could be the most minute thing, the most, I don't know. I guess most people might say it might be a stupid question or a very, I don't know, not so important question that people would say is so deep, it's got depth. Um, I feel like any question is good to ask about yourself. Even if you need to write it down, like you are talking to somebody or you're writing a script, you can write down, okay, well, I responded this way. I did this today, or I did da 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 da. I need to kind of check into this when I have my alone time. Meditation is a good way to do that. You clear out the space, you have no noise. You can even shut the lights off. Most people do, and you just are with your own thoughts. And you learn how to really focus on certain things that you truly want to think about, and you hone in on that thought. But meditation, I feel like it's a good way to also hear your own thoughts without hearing all this noise in the world. We got social media, electronics all day. But yeah, I feel like that is a good way to really kind of get a closer relationship with yourself as well. And a good way to also start trusting yourself and your own thoughts. This is a part of that process. A lot of us don't trust ourselves to do something fully. We might even, like, I've had plenty of times where I've started a project and I never finished it. So, me doing this podcast, it coming up on, closing my season soon, different things like that, that is something that is a big achievement for me to finish. And then I still have to continue on to keep pushing through. I've gotten negative comments, I've gotten people that are offended, they take things personally. This isn't any of this that I'm speaking about is nothing to personally attack anyone. This is to help, only to help. So if it resonates, it resonates. If it does not, I still appreciate you for watching, and I still would appreciate your feedback because it always helps someone else, and it helps us to see ourselves in a different light. But that can also be used in someone's shadow work, your perspective on certain things. So it's never personal, but going back to just being able to finish certain things and completing things, I feel like that is such a great achievement. A lot of times we don't realize how big of importance that is because a lot of us don't finish things. We might start something and then we're like, I don't really want to do that, especially in this day and time. So kind of honestly, it's just learning things about yourself. I learned that about myself through just sitting back and looking at all the different things that I started and I did not finish. Like, I had a couple of things. I still have some things that I have not finished. So it's something that I really said, you know what, I'm gonna complete this. I'm gonna complete this next thing. And I just start working on it bit by bit. It's not about shadow work isn't about you rushing to fix yourself. Because it's not necessarily saying anything's wrong with you. We all are wounded. We all are very wounded. If we really not take about, think about. If we really think about the world and how it affects us, even growing up from being a child, it honestly, there's so much trauma and different things that we have endured, just overall, and we might have internalized certain things and certain patterns and different ways to respond to things from the people that are around us in our lives. So we have to take that into perspective when we're looking at these different things, while we're doing our shadow work, while we're looking at different things for ourselves personally. We can't just always think that I'm failing or I'm not doing right and life is just messing up for me, because just like I said in episode 6, and I think I said this in episode 3, Your perspective shapes your reality so much. So it's better to have a more positive outlook. I'm not saying be completely optimistic like me. Okay. But I am saying it's better to have a positive outlook on things, and that way your experience can be more positive. Your brain will actually be programmed to look for the more positive things in life, rather than you sitting there and looking for negative opportunities. I mean, you sitting there getting mad about road rage, people cutting you off, and now you got 10 people cutting you off. You know why? Because you were so focused on that one person cutting you off. Now it's just keep coming and just keep rolling. Not to say that that's exactly what people's situation, but that has happened to me before. So I feel like overall, in my personal experience, I'm not sure if it will help you. I hope it will. But just to keep a more positive outlook on things, even when you're doing your shadow work, make sure that you give yourself gratitude. Make sure that you're moving through it with love and care for yourself. Do not let it make you feel depressed or down and feel like you can't be fixed and there's just something wrong with you and this is the life that you are meant to have. Because you could really change your life at any moment. So just make sure that you're doing the work. Isolation isn't always negative. It might feel lonely, but you're never truly alone. So just more so think of it as this is a time and process that I need to take so I can get to the point where I'm not feeling lonely. So I can get to the point where I am, one of the biggest talk shows or whatever it might be that you're trying to achieve. I'm the greatest artist out there, or whatever it might be, whatever level you're trying to get, you have to go through growing pains, and that's typical because us as human beings, we like to avoid certain things that don't feel joyous, that don't feel happy. Um, and that's why we dread going to our 9 to 5s. We might get paid to do it, but a lot of times we are tired. So it might not look so great, might not feel so great, but it is necessary. And I think that if you more so look at shadow work in that perspective, you appreciate the process a lot more. And I think that that is really my message, more so to appreciate the process, really go through the process. I've tried to avoid the process so many times and I had to circle back. So it's better to go through the process so you don't have to circle back again and again. It is uh, an ongoing process, it is an ongoing learning process, but it gets easier the more that you appreciate the learning lessons and you actually learn the lessons. So the more that you take the time to do that, it'll be better off for you. I feel like overall, that is, up to you, however you would like to take the process. But that is a big point, and it takes a lot to do. So I'm not gonna say that you could just jump right in and it's just okay. A lot of times you might have to start over a couple of times. But overall, do the shadow work and make sure you self integrate. Do not sit there and condemn yourself. Do not just constantly just judging yourself in a negative way. Do not do that. So just take the shadow work, do it with love, do it with care, and make sure you give yourself gratitude for the achievements that you do have. Make sure you give yourself grace. And I would like to go ahead and conclude this episode with that message. I do appreciate you guys for being here with me on Evolve Flow Express. This episode, of course, was about shadow work and self integration. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope you're here for the last finale. The finale episode will be episode 9, and that'll be the end of the season. So see you next time. Bye.